Hello, I'm Professor Andrew Lynch from the University of Miami and the Miami Observatory on Communication and Creative Industries. I'm glad to be able to present this segment of an interview that I conducted with Cuban-American novelist Cristina Garcia, without a doubt one of the most highly regarded authors of U.S. Latino literature. Cristina Garcia first met national critical acclaim in 1992 with the publication of Dreaming in Cuban. That novel, along with 4 others that she's published to date, are characterized by a highly poetic style of prose, bounded by themes of language and identity, nature and belief, possibility and place, time and memory. In this clip, I talked to her about the relationship between magic and science, the natural and the supernatural, and belief and fact. I understand that while writing Dreaming in Cuban, you were reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and that makes me wonder how much the Latin American tradition of magical realism perhaps has influenced your work.
I read a lot of Lorca. I read a lot of Wallace Stevens. I'll tell you what I had on my desk. I can almost picture it. The Palm at the End of the Mind collection, Wallace Stevens, 100 Years of Solitude, collection of Garcia Lorca, and Song of Solomon, Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon.
So you just read pieces of each novel, sort of moving back and forth?
Yes, just dip in for inspiration. I mean, you can't... For me, the consistent cheerleader is Chekhov. He always inspires me.
Would you say that that magical realism has influenced you? I wouldn't exactly characterize your novels as being representative of magical realism, but I do sort of get a sense of that in your work, and I wondered what your experience had been with magical realism in the act of writing.
In many ways, I came to the Latin Americanists last. I probably, I loved reading magic books as a kid. The Edward Eger books, I forget his name, Edgar Eger. But anyway, it was just one magic book after another. I loved books of fantasy, and I loved A Wrinkle in Time, all these things as a kid. And but when I, as a teenager, I first came across Kafka's The Metamorphosis, I thought, what extraordinary audacity! You just have someone waking up as a beetle, you know, and why not? So it was incredibly liberating. And but I also saw that in the work of you know, American writers, in Song of Solomon or Louise Erdrich's work. Or I mean, it's not exclusive to the Latin Americanists. But then, of course, I started reading the Latin American writers, I would say in my mid to late 20s, and I just of course loved it. What's not to love? But I wouldn't say they have the market cornered on magical realism. I think it surfaces and emerges in all our great literatures, and gives flight. You know, gives flight to our fancies and to our own imaginations as writers. So yeah, I'm indebted to multiple cultures and many writers who also resist those hard and fast boundaries between reality and magic.
One of my favorite characters in your work is Fernando Florit, a great magician who left Cuba after the revolution and ends up struggling to make a living in Las Vegas, of course. He gets on everyone's nerves, but he's somehow lovable. Perhaps, at least for me, what makes him so lovable is his childlike optimism, even as an older man, his certainty that anything and everything is possible. Science and fact are not truth for him. He's a master of illusions. In him, we see the highly dubious relationship between the physical world, according to science, and the spiritual or supernatural world, according to magic or even religion. Fernando Florit is, to me, sort of what your novels do in terms of reality and what's not reality. Would you agree or disagree with me on that?
Oh, I would wholeheartedly agree, I think, with that. And I'm so glad you singled out Fernando, because he, pretty much everyone I've written, all my characters, he's my favorite. For many of the reasons you said, he's the big annoying baby, but I felt protective toward him. I had like this terrible maternal feeling toward him. The worse he got, the more empathic I felt. But anyway, I think, and we were talking about this at another point, I think, when I visited your seminar, which is, for me, the boundaries between reality and surrealism or the fantastical are not so clear cut as scientists would have that boundary be. At least in terms of the novels, I think of reality as those boundaries, such as they are, is very, very perforated, loosely perforated at best, and that I love that space between those dashes, I love that the perforation. That's where I love to be in a novel most, where things are between remotely possible and absolutely impossible. It's my favorite place to be. Yeah. And it's where I can be most playful. It's where I can have the most fun, and it's where it's a way also of questioning assumptions that work not just about reality or facts, but about politics, about anything else. It's a way of shattering and kind of snubbing the rules. So for me, someone like Fernando, his whole life is an illusion. He's creating a narrative for himself that bears almost no relation to reality whatsoever. But he's fueled by optimism, which you need in writing a novel. We're nothing if not optimistic novelists, no matter how much they grouse about the work, you have to be optimistic to take on a novel. And all kinds of fantastical things can happen on his stage. Things go wrong. He kills his wife, he gets a bullet in his mouth or whatever, but all these terrible things go awry, and yet the show must go on. And I definitely feel a kinship with him in that sense. You could be, juggling flaming swords, but somehow you just have to pull it off, and you don't have, and you have a lot more space to do that than poor Fernando does on a stage in front of a rough Las Vegas crowd. But really, it's all performance in one way or another, I think.